The private dining room at Sakura occupies the entire top floor of San Francisco's newest architectural marvel, a glass and steel tower that rises like a blade above the fog of the financial district. Tonight, the room has been reserved for what the tech blogs are calling the biggest cross-Pacific acquisition since SoftBank bought Arm. $200 billion in combined market capitalization will negotiate across a table set with areta, porcelain, and baccarat crystal. The sake is Juyondai, $50,000 per bottle. The kaiseki menu has been personally designed by a chef with 3 Michelin stars. The stakes are higher than the building itself. Mei-Lin Chen moves through this world like water around stones, present everywhere, noticed nowhere. She is 29 years old, with delicate features that guests often misread as purely Chinese, never guessing at the complexity beneath. Her black hair is pulled back in a simple knot. Her server's uniform, crisp white jacket, black pants, renders her as invisible as the air conditioning. When she speaks, her English carries no accent at all, the product of a childhood split between Tokyo, Shanghai, and eventually a scholarship to Stanford that changed everything and nothing. The guests who glance at her see what they expect to see. Another Asian face in a city full of them. Another server in a restaurant that employs dozens. They do not see the woman who graduated summa cum laude from Stanford Law, with a specialization in international business transactions. They do not see the former associate at Morrison & Foerster, who spent 3 years negotiating cross-border deals between American tech giants and Asian conglomerates. They do not see the author of a Stanford Law Review article on linguistic asymmetries in Japanese-American contract interpretation that is still cited in international arbitration proceedings. They see a waitress. They see nothing. Mei-Lin's expertise was forged in 2 worlds. Her mother, Yuki, was Japanese, a translator for the Ministry of Economy, Trade, and Industry, who fell in love with a Chinese-American engineer during a technology exchange program in the 1990s. Her father, David Chen, built semiconductor equipment in Silicon Valley before the industry moved to Taiwan, and his expertise became obsolete. Mei-Lin grew up bilingual in Japanese and English, trilingual when her grandmother insisted on Mandarin lessons, and quadrilingual by the time she added legal terminology in all 3 languages, plus the specialized vocabulary of international contract law. She was, by any measure, brilliant. Her undergraduate thesis at Berkeley examined how Japanese concepts like nemawashi, the informal consensus building that precedes formal decisions, created exploitable gaps in negotiations with Western companies who didn't understand that the real agreement happened before anyone sat down at the table. Her law school work extended this analysis, documenting dozens of cases where American firms had been outmaneuvered because they couldn't read the cultural subtext beneath the contractual language. She learned early that language was never just words. Her mother taught her the concept of hon and tatame, the distinction between one's true feelings and the public facade one presents to maintain social harmony. In Japanese business culture, what is said directly is often less important than what is implied, suggested, or deliberately left unsaid. Western negotiators, trained in directness and explicit agreement, frequently missed these signals entirely, signing contracts they thought favorable, while their Japanese counterparts knew the real terms had been established through channels the Americans never even noticed. Morrison & Foerster recruited her before she finished her 2nd year. She was exactly what they needed, someone who could sit in rooms with Japanese executives and understand not just what they were saying, but what they meant, what they implied, what they communicated through silence and gesture, and the particular formality of their honorifics. She closed deals worth billions. She caught discrepancies that other attorneys missed. She was on partner track by her 3rd year. Then her mother was diagnosed with early-onset Alzheimer's, and the architecture of Mei-Lin's life collapsed like a building with a cracked foundation. Her father had died 2 years earlier, a heart attack at 63, the cumulative toll of decades of stress and the particular loneliness of an engineer whose industry had left him behind. Her mother, already showing signs of confusion, needed full-time care. The facilities that could accommodate her, that had staff who spoke Japanese, who understood her cultural needs, who could communicate with her as her English faded and only her childhood language remained, cost more than Mei-Lin's associate salary could cover, even with the bonuses. She took leave. The leave extended. The firm, sympathetic but ultimately practical, suggested she might be happier elsewhere. The elsewhere turned out to be a series of contract positions that paid less and demanded more, then a period of unemployment that ate through her savings, Then the humiliation of taking a job at a restaurant because it offered flexible hours and cash tips that could supplement the inadequate insurance payments. Now, she serves sake to people who once hired her to protect them from exactly the kind of situation unfolding in this room tonight. Because Maylene recognizes what's happening, she recognizes the players, she recognizes the dynamics, and she recognizes, with the precision of someone who spent 3 years studying exactly this pattern, that the Japanese delegation is about to be catastrophically deceived by people who are counting on cultural politeness to prevent anyone from saying so. The American contingent arrives first, as Americans always do, early, aggressive, treating punctuality as a competitive advantage rather than a baseline courtesy. Maylin watches from her station near the service entrance, cataloging faces she knows from financial news and legal filings. Bradley Thornton, CEO of Nexus Technologies, leads the group. 47 years old, Stanford MBA. 3 successful exits that made him wealthy, and 1 IPO that made him a billionaire. His company has developed proprietary AI infrastructure that every major tech firm wants to acquire. He is, by reputation, brilliant and ruthless in equal measure. The kind of executive who views negotiations as zero-sum games to be won rather than relationships to be built. Behind him, Marcus Webb, Nexus's chief legal officer. Maylin knows him professionally. They crossed paths twice during her Morrison and Forrester days, always on opposite sides of the table. He is competent, aggressive, and possessed of the particular arrogance that comes from never having lost a negotiation he couldn't blame on someone else. The rest of the American team fills in around them. Investment bankers from Goldman Sachs, outside counsel from Sullivan and Cromwell, a communications consultant whose job is to manage the press release that will follow whatever happens tonight. They move with the confidence of people who believe they hold all the cards. The Japanese delegation arrives precisely on time, not early, not late, but exactly when the reservation specified. This, Maylin knows, is itself a message. They are professionals who honor commitments to the letter, and they expect the same in return. Takeshi Yamamoto, chairman of Yamamoto Heavy Industries, enters first. 71 years old, the 3rd generation of his family to lead the company. A man who built his reputation on precision engineering and his fortune on knowing when Western partners were trying to take advantage of Japanese politeness. His English is excellent, educated at Cambridge in the 1970s, but he speaks it rarely, preferring to let his translators handle communication while he observes. Behind him, his granddaughter, Akiko Yamamoto, who serves as Vice President of International Partnerships. She is 32, Tokyo University law degree, 2 years at a London firm, and widely regarded as the future of the company. Her English is flawless, her manner direct in ways that sometimes surprise Western executives who expect Japanese women to be deferential. The rest of the Japanese team arranges itself with careful attention to hierarchy. Senior executives, technical advisors, translators, and a single attorney whose presence signals that this negotiation has reached its final stages. They are here to sign, not to debate. The terms have been agreed. Tonight is ceremony, or so they believe. Maylin understands the significance of what she is witnessing. Yamamoto Heavy Industries is not merely a company. It is an institution, a family legacy that has survived world wars and economic crises and the constant pressure of global competition. Chairman Yamamoto's grandfather founded the company in 1907. His father rebuilt it from the ashes of World War II. Chairman Yamamoto himself transformed it from a heavy machinery manufacturer into a technology conglomerate with interests spanning 3 continents. The company's word is its bond, its contracts honored not because lawyers enforce them, but because the Yamamoto name represents 117 years of integrity. Maylin begins the evening's service, moving among the guests with practiced invisibility. She pours sake for Chairman Yamamoto, water for Bradley Thornton, answers questions about the menu in the carefully neutral English of professional service. No one looks at her twice. The conversation begins with pleasantries, weather, travel, the excellence of the restaurant. Then Bradley Thornton shifts the tone, leaning forward with the predatory focus that has made him wealthy. Bradley Thornton, Chairman. Yamamoto, we're honored you've come all this way to finalize our partnership. I know we've had some spirited discussions about the technology transfer provisions, but I believe we've reached an agreement that benefits everyone. The translator renders this into Japanese. Chairman Yamamoto listens, nods, responds in Japanese. The translator converts his words back to English. Translator Chairman Yamamoto says he is pleased to be here and looks forward to a productive partnership. Mei Lin, refilling water glasses, catches what the translator omitted. Chairman Yamamoto actually said he hopes the partnership will prove worthy of the trust Yamamoto Heavy Industries is placing in Nexus Technologies. The nuance, the implication that trust is being extended conditionally, has been smoothed away. She files this away and continues her work. The meal progresses through its elaborate courses. Between dishes, documents are produced, the final agreement ready for signature. Marcus Webb walks the Japanese team through the key provisions, his tone confident, his explanations thorough. The translator converts everything into Japanese, and the Japanese executives listen with the patient attentiveness that Western negotiators often mistake for agreement. Mei Lin clears plates. She refills glasses. She moves through the room like furniture, hearing everything, and what she hears makes her blood run cold. The contract language, as Marcus Webb presents it, sounds straightforward. Yamamoto. Heavy Industries will acquire a 40% stake in Nexus Technologies, with full access to Nexus's AI infrastructure for integration into Yamamoto's manufacturing systems. In exchange, Nexus receives $3 billion in capital and access to Yamamoto's Asian distribution networks. But Mei Lin has spent 3 years reading contracts exactly like this one, and she recognizes the architecture of deception being constructed in the spaces between the words. The technology transfer provisions contain what lawyers call scope limitations. Carefully worded restrictions that appear to grant full access while actually carving out the most valuable intellectual property. The AI infrastructure being licensed is the older generation of Nexus's technology, not the breakthrough systems that made the company valuable. The full access is limited to commercial applications, excluding the military and aerospace contracts that represent 60% of Nexus's future revenue projections. Worse, the contract's dispute resolution clause specifies arbitration under California law, in English, with American arbitrators. Any challenge to the agreement's terms will be fought on ground where Yamamoto Heavy Industries is at a permanent disadvantage, not because they lack legal sophistication, but because the cultural assumptions embedded in American contract interpretation will inevitably favor the American party. Mei Lin wrote about exactly this pattern in her Stanford Law Review article. She called it asymmetric ambiguity, the deliberate use of language that means one thing in American legal culture and something subtly different in Japanese business culture. The American party drafts terms that a Japanese reader would interpret as more generous than they actually are, counting on cultural reluctance to challenge apparent agreement and the linguistic complexity of exposing the deception. The technique exploits a fundamental difference in how American and Japanese business cultures approach contracts. In America, the contract is the relationship. Every term must be explicit because trust is vested in the document itself. In Japan, the contract is a formalization of a relationship that already exists, built through months or years of nemawashi and mutual understanding. Japanese negotiators often sign agreements with certain flexibility assumed, believing that reasonable partners will work through ambiguities in good faith. American parties, trained to maximize every advantage embedded in contractual language, see these ambiguities as exploitable opportunities rather than spaces for cooperative interpretation. She watches Akiko Yamamoto's face as the translator explains each provision. The young executive is frowning slightly. She senses something wrong, but cannot identify it precisely. Her legal training was in British law, not American. She knows the words, but not the particular American techniques for making disadvantageous terms sound beneficial. Chairman Yamamoto, older and warier, asks a question in Japanese. The translator conveys it to Marcus Webb. Translator Chairman Yamamoto asks for clarification on the technology transfer scope. He wants to confirm that the agreement includes access to all current Nexus AI systems. Marcus Webb, absolutely. The agreement provides comprehensive access to our AI infrastructure. Yamamoto Heavy Industries will have everything they need to integrate our technology into their manufacturing operations. Mei Lin's jaw tightens. AI infrastructure is defined elsewhere in the contract as systems currently deployed in commercial applications. The newest systems, the ones that tripled Nexus's valuation, are still in development and therefore excluded. Webb's answer is technically accurate and profoundly misleading. The translator renders Webb's response into Japanese. Chairman Yamamoto nods, apparently satisfied. Akiko Yamamoto's frown deepens, but she does not challenge her grandfather in front of the Americans. This too is cultural, the obligation to maintain harmony, to present a unified front, to resolve disagreements privately rather than publicly. Bradley Thornton, watching the exchange, turns to Marcus Webb and speaks in a low voice. low enough that he clearly believes only his own team can hear. Bradley Thornton, quietly to Webb. They're buying it. The old man thinks he's getting the crown jewels. By the time they figure out what they actually purchased, we'll have their $3 billion, and they'll be stuck with yesterday's tech. Marcus Wabe, equally quiet. The definition games alone will tie them up in arbitration for years. And good luck explaining scope limitations to a panel of American arbitrators who think a deal is a deal. Mei Lin is close enough to hear every word. She continues pouring water, her expression neutral, her hands steady. But inside, something is crystallizing. The cold clarity of someone who has spent years studying exactly this kind of predatory behavior, and now watches it unfold in real time. Bradley Thornton glances at her, at the Asian woman in the server's uniform, and smirks. He leans toward his colleague and adds, in Japanese that is clumsy but comprehensible, Bradley Thornton in broken Japanese, Kono baka na Nihonjin tachi wa nani mo wakaranai. These stupid Japanese don't understand anything. He laughs at his own wit. Webb chuckles politely, not understanding the Japanese but appreciating the gesture. Neither of them notices that Mei Lin has gone perfectly still, or that her eyes have changed, hardened into something that no longer resembles a server's careful blankness. She has a choice to make. She can stay invisible, collect her tips, go home to her mother's care facility, and pay another week's bills. She can watch $3 billion flow from a company that built its reputation on integrity to executives who are laughing about defrauding them in their own language. Or she can remember who she is. Mei Lin sets down her water pitcher. She turns to face Bradley Thornton directly, and when she speaks, her Japanese is not the broken tourist phrases he attempted. It is the formal, precise Japanese of diplomatic communication, delivered with a Kyoto-inflected politeness that marks the highest levels of professional discourse. Mei Lin, informal Japanese. Shitsurei shimasu ga, Thornton-san. Nihongo de no go hatsugen wa totemo omoshiroi desu ne. Tadashi maen baka toyu kotoba wa kono heya ni imasu subete no kata ni kikoemashita. Translation: Excuse me, Mr. Thornton. Your remarks in Japanese were very interesting. However, the word stupid was heard by everyone in this room. The silence that follows is absolute. Bradley Thornton's face cycles through confusion, recognition, and then drains of color entirely. Chairman Yamamoto has turned toward her, his expression unreadable. Akiko Yamamoto's eyes have widened with sudden, fierce interest. Bradley Thornton, stammering, You speak Japanese? Mei Lin, switching to English, fluently. My mother was Japanese, a translator for Mitiai before she married my father. I grew up in Tokyo until I was 12. I also hold a law degree from Stanford, where I specialized in Japanese-American contract negotiations. She turns to address Chairman Yamamoto directly, speaking in Japanese with the respectful formality his position demands. Mei Lin, in Japanese. Yamamoto Kaicho, shitsurei wo omoshi shimasu ga, kono keiyaku ni wa judai na mondai ga arimasu. Watashi wa 3 nenkan, kono yona keiyaku o senmon ni kenkyu shimashita. Setsumei sasete itadakemasu ka? Translation: Chairman Yamamoto, I apologize for the presumption, but there are serious problems with this contract. I studied contracts like this professionally for 3 years. May I explain? Chairman Yamamoto studies her for a long moment. Whatever he sees in her face, competence, conviction, or perhaps the ghost of his own translators who serve powerful men while being treated as furniture, he nods once, formally. Chairman Yamamoto, in Japanese. Dozo, please proceed. Marcus Webb, standing, voice rising. Now, wait just a minute. This woman is a server. She has no standing in this negotiation. Chairman Yamamoto, I must insist, Akiko Yamamoto, in English, sharp and clear. Mr. Webb, you will be silent. My grandfather has given this woman permission to speak. In our culture, that is sufficient standing. Webb opens his mouth to argue, but Bradley Thornton's hand on his arm stops him. Thornton's face has gone from white to gray, the color of a man watching his carefully constructed scheme collapse. Mei Lin picks up the contract from the table. Her hands are steady. Her voice, when she continues, carries the authority of someone who has spent years in rooms exactly like this one, speaking truth to people who did not want to hear it. Mei Lin, to Chairman Yamamoto in Japanese, then translating herself into English for the room. The technology transfer provisions in Section 7.3 contain what American lawyers call scope limitations. The phrase AI infrastructure is defined in Section 2.1 as systems currently deployed in commercial applications. This excludes all development stage technology, including the neural network architecture that represents 80% of Nexus's current valuation. She flips to another section, MEI-LIN. The full access granted in Section 7.4 is limited to commercial manufacturing applications. This excludes military, aerospace, and government contracts, which represent 60% of Nexus's projected revenue growth over the next 5 years. Yamamoto Heavy Industries would be paying $3 billion for access to technology that Nexus is already planning to phase out. Bradley Thornton, desperately. These are standard provisions. Every technology licensing agreement has scope limitations. We're not hiding anything. The definitions are right there in the contract. MEI-LIN. Yes, they are. Buried in definitions that span 40 pages, cross-referenced in ways designed to obscure their cumulative impact. I wrote my law school thesis on exactly this technique. American drafters exploit the Japanese preference for trusting business relationships over adversarial contract review. You count on cultural politeness preventing close examination of terms that would be challenged immediately in a domestic American deal. She turns to the dispute resolution clause. MEI-LIN Section 15.2 specifies arbitration under California law, in English, with arbitrators selected from a panel that is 94% American. Any dispute about the meaning of these carefully ambiguous terms will be decided by people who share Nexus's cultural assumptions about contract interpretation. This isn't a partnership agreement, it's a trap. Chairman Yamamoto has been listening with growing intensity. His face, trained through 50 years of high-stakes negotiation to reveal nothing, shows the faintest flicker of something that might be anger or might be vindication. Chairman Yamamoto, in Japanese to his team. Naze watashi tachi no bengoshi wa koreto minogashita no desu ka? Translation: why did our lawyers miss this? MEI-LIN, in Japanese, answering directly. Yamamoto Kaicho, anata no bengoshi tachi wa sugureta horitsuka desu. Demo, kono gijutsu wa Nihon no horitsu bunka ni wa sonzai shimasen. Amerika no keiyaku sakusei wa Nihon no shinyo ni motozuku kosho to wa chigau zenti de okonawaremasu. Translation: Chairman Yamamoto, your lawyers are excellent, but this technique does not exist in Japanese legal culture. American contract drafting operates on different assumptions than Japanese trust-based negotiation. She pauses, then adds the crucial point, the one that transforms this from a legal dispute into something more damaging. MEI-LIN, in English for the room. Before I interrupted, Mr. Thornton told his colleague, in Japanese he assumed no one else understood, that Yamamoto Heavy Industries would be stuck with yesterday's tech by the time they understood what they'd actually purchased. He called your team stupid Japanese. He was laughing about defrauding you while you sat across the table preparing to sign in good faith. The room has gone completely silent. Akiko Yamamoto's face has flushed with barely contained fury. The Japanese executives exchange glances that communicate volumes without words. The American team has frozen, their expressions ranging from shock to calculated damage assessment. MEI-LIN. You asked me if I speak Japanese. I do, fluently. And I understood every insult you thought was private, every scheme you thought was hidden, every assumption you made about the stupid people across this table. The woman you dismissed as a waitress spent 3 years at Morrison & Foerster, preventing exactly the kind of fraud you're attempting tonight. The collapse is immediate and total. Chairman Yamamoto rises from his seat, a gesture that, in Japanese business culture, signals the end of all discussion. His team rises with him, a synchronized movement that speaks of decades of shared understanding. No words are necessary. The negotiation is over. Chairman Yamamoto, in Japanese to Akiko. Watashi tachi wa kono kaisha to no subete no kosho wo shuryo shimasu. Kohobu ni renraku shite seimei wo junbi sasete kudasai. Translation: We are terminating all negotiations with this company. Contact our communications department and have them prepare a statement. Bradley Thornton, standing desperate. Chairman Yamamoto, please, this is a misunderstanding. The provisions she's describing are standard industry practice. Every deal has technical definitions. We can renegotiate the terms. Akiko Yamamoto, in English, her voice like ice. You called us stupid, Mr. Thornton. In Japanese, in a room full of Japanese executives. You laughed about defrauding a company that has operated with integrity for 117 years. There is no renegotiation. There is no partnership. There is only the question of whether we will pursue legal action for attempted fraud. Marcus Webb to Thornton, Lowe, and Urgent. Brad, we need to get out of here, now, before this gets worse. But it is already worse than they know. Akiko Yamamoto has her phone out, speaking rapidly in Japanese to someone at Yamamoto headquarters. Within minutes, the news will reach Tokyo. Within hours, it will spread through the Japanese business community. Within days, every company considering partnership with Nexus Technologies will know that Bradley Thornton attempted to defraud one of Japan's most respected industrial families while mocking them in their own language. The Goldman Sachs bankers are already calculating the damage, the deal fees that will never materialize, the reputation hit that will follow them to their next pitch. The Sullivan and Cromwell attorneys are mentally drafting memos explaining how the situation deteriorated. The communications consultant is realizing that the press release she prepared will never be sent, and that her firm will be lucky to avoid being associated with the debacle. Bradley Thornton stands frozen, watching the $3 billion deal. The validation of his career, the proof of his genius, dissolve because he couldn't resist insulting the people he was trying to deceive, in a language he assumed no one else in the room could understand. The irony is not lost on anyone present. Thornton built his fortune on the assumption that technical superiority was the only form of intelligence that mattered. He never learned Japanese beyond a few crude phrases, never studied the culture of the people he was trying to exploit, never considered that understanding might flow in both directions. He saw language as a barrier to be exploited rather than a bridge to be crossed, and tonight, that barrier has collapsed on top of him. In the weeks to come, the ripples from this dinner will spread through both Silicon Valley and Tokyo. Nexus Technologies stock will drop 14% when news of the failed acquisition breaks. 3 board members will resign. Bradley Thornton will step down as CEO, citing personal reasons, though everyone will know the real cause. The company that was supposed to be acquired will eventually be sold to a competitor for 40% less than the Yamamoto deal would have provided. Chairman Yamamoto pauses at the door. He turns back, not to Bradley Thornton, not to Marcus Webb, but to Mei Lin. He bows, a formal bow of respect that acknowledges her service. Chairman Yamamoto in Japanese. Arigato gozaimashita. Anata no yuki ni kansha shimasu. Translation: thank you. I am grateful for your courage. Mei Lin bows in return, matching his formality precisely. When she straightens, Chairman Yamamoto is smiling, a small, private smile that speaks of recognition across generations and circumstances. The Japanese delegation departs. The American team remains frozen in the wreckage of their schemes, surrounded by the debris of a dinner that was supposed to celebrate their triumph. An hour later, the private dining room has emptied of everyone except Mei Lin and one unexpected guest. She is collecting the abandoned contracts and discarded documents when she realizes Akiko Yamamoto has returned, standing near the entrance with an expression that suggests she has been observing for some time. Akiko Yamamoto in Japanese. Chen-san, may I speak with you? Mei Lin sets down the papers. The formality of the address, san rather than the casual forms one might use with service staff, signals that something has shifted. Mei Lin in Japanese. Of course, Yamamoto-san, how may I help you? Akiko, Yamamoto, switching to English but maintaining the respectful tone. I looked you up. Mei Lin Chen, Stanford Law Review, Linguistic Asymmetries in Japanese-American Contract Interpretation. Morrison and Forster, Associate specializing in cross-border transactions. Your article is cited in our legal department's training materials on negotiating with American firms. Mei Lin. That was several years ago. Circumstances changed. Akiko Yamamoto. I know, your mother, Alzheimer's. The care facility in Japantown costs $8,000 monthly, and your insurance covers less than half. You left your career to care for her, and the legal industry doesn't forgive gaps in employment, even for family obligation. Mei Lin stiffens. The accuracy of Akiko's information is unsettling. This woman has done thorough research in a very short time. Akiko Yamamoto. Don't be alarmed. I'm not stalking you. I asked my assistant to find out why someone with your qualifications was serving sake at a restaurant. When I learned the reason, I understood something important about who you are. Mei Lin. And what did you understand? Akiko Yamamoto. That you chose family over career, that you sacrificed your professional future to honor your obligation to your mother. In Japanese culture, we call this oyakoko, filial devotion. It is considered one of the highest virtues. You demonstrated it at great personal cost, and then tonight, you demonstrated another virtue, speaking truth when silence would have been safer. She pauses, studying Mei Lin with the same intensity her grandfather showed earlier. Akiko Yamamoto. My grandfather was impressed. He does not impress easily. Before the war, his own mother hid production equipment from American bombing raids, preserving the machinery that rebuilt our company. He sees something of her in you, someone who protects what matters when powerful forces try to destroy it. Part 7. The life-changing offer. Akiko Yamamoto reaches into her portfolio and produces a business card, heavy stock, embossed with the Yamamoto Heavy Industries crest that has represented Japanese engineering excellence for over a century. Akiko Yamamoto. Yamamoto Heavy Industries is establishing a new division, International Partnership Integrity. Our mandate will be to review every cross-border agreement before we commit capital, to ensure that our partners are negotiating in good faith and that the terms we sign match the terms we understand. MEI lean, carefully. That sounds like significant work. Akiko Yamamoto. It is, and it requires someone with your specific combination of skills, legal training in American contract interpretation, native fluency in Japanese, and the courage to speak truth, even when powerful people would prefer silence. I want you to lead this division. Mei Lin's breath catches. This is not a job offer. This is a transformation. A doorway from the shadows back into the light she was forced to leave. Akiko Yamamoto. The position is based in San Francisco, so you would not need to relocate from your mother. The starting salary is $400,000 annually, with performance bonuses tied to successful fraud prevention and partnership protection. Yamamoto Heavy Industries will also establish a care trust for your mother. Consider it an investment in your peace of mind and our recognition of the virtue that brought you to this point. Mei Lin feels tears threatening at the corners of her eyes. She blinks them back, maintaining the composure that has carried her through years of invisible service. MEI Lin, I have conditions. Akiko Yamamoto, slight smile. I would be disappointed if you did not. MEI Lin, full independence in my assessments, no pressure from executives or board members to approve partnerships I consider problematic. If I identify deceptive practices in a proposed agreement, my concerns must be addressed before any signature, regardless of the deal's size or the partner's prestige. Akiko Yamamoto. The integrity of Yamamoto Heavy Industries is worth more than any single partnership. Your independence is not a concession. It is the entire point. What else? MEI Lin, a scholarship fund. Named after my mother, Yuki Chen. Full support for students from bicultural backgrounds, pursuing law degrees with specialization in international business. The people who bridge worlds the way my mother did, who might otherwise fall through the gaps between cultures. Akiko Yamamoto, the Yuki Chen Scholarship for Cross-Cultural Legal Excellence. Yamamoto, Heavy Industries will endow it with $5 million, supporting 10 full scholarships annually in perpetuity. Your mother's name will open doors for students who share her gift for bridging worlds. Now, the tears do fall. Mei Lin does not hide them. They are earned, the culmination of years of sacrifice and service, of invisible work and visible courage, of choosing family over career and then finding that both could be honored after all. She thinks of her mother, who once moved between languages as easily as breathing, who taught Mei Lin that words were bridges between worlds. Now her mother lives in a facility where the staff speaks Japanese to her because her English has faded, where she sometimes recognizes Mei Lin and sometimes does not, where the brilliant translator who once served Japan's economic ministry has been reduced to fragments of memory and occasional moments of clarity. But in those moments of clarity, her mother asks about Mei Lin's work, and now, finally, Mei Lin will have something to tell her. Something that would make sense to a woman who spent her life bridging cultures. Something that honors the gift her mother gave her. The ability to understand not just words, but worlds. To hear not just what is said, but what is meant. Akiko Yamamoto, extending her hand. Chen-san, do we have an agreement? MEI Lin, taking her hand, her grip firm. Yamamoto-san, we do. She is no longer the invisible woman in the server's uniform, bearing trays and enduring insults in languages her customers assumed she couldn't understand. She is Mei Lin Chen, Stanford Law, Morrison and Forster, Director of International Partnership Integrity for Yamamoto Heavy Industries. She is the daughter of a woman who bridged cultures, the student who studied the gaps between languages, the expert who sees the deceptions hidden in the space between what is said and what is meant. Tomorrow, she will visit her mother at the care facility. She will sit beside her bed and speak to her in Japanese, the language that remains when English has faded, the mother tongue that connects them even when memory fails. She will tell her about tonight, about the bow and the reply, and the billionaire who learned that respect is not a courtesy, but a necessity. She does not know if her mother will understand. But perhaps, somewhere in the depths of that brilliant mind, the translator who once served ministries and bridged nations will recognize that her daughter has continued the work. And she is the woman who taught a billionaire that the most dangerous insult is the one you whisper in a language you assume no one else speaks.